recently, we had, and please remember to hit the like button again, share the live. Recently, the UN, the Prime Minister, the so-called Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, I don't say anything honorable about him, and I don't know of this doctor business. So, Mr. Andrew Holness, that are the most we can do. Mr. Andrew Holness had this to say at the UN, and we're gonna compare and contrast what he had to say versus what Miss Mottley had to say. And I'm going to play a voice note that somebody sent to me. And it's funny, when he said it, I was like, bro, I was thinking the same thing. I was literally watching the thing and thinking the same thing. All right, so let's listen to this.
To preside over this landmark 80th session of the General Assembly. Just last week, Jamaica marked 63 years as a proud member of the United Nations. As we celebrate the UN's 80th anniversary, we reaffirm our unwavering commitment to the principles of the UN Charter. From decolonization to peacekeeping, from eradicating diseases to promoting human rights, the UN has achieved remarkable success over these past 8 decades. Yet, as we confront global challenges, including pandemics, climate change, armed conflict, and persistent poverty, we must acknowledge that our multilateral system requires urgent reform and revitalization to meet the needs of the 21st century. The UN 80 initiative is an opportunity to strengthen multilateralism with concrete action, institutional reform, and renewed political will. We must build a system that is more democratic, representative, and responsive to evolving challenges. Jamaica is honored that our permanent representative is co-chairing the working group on UN 80 mandate implementation review, along with the permanent representative of New Zealand, and we look forward to meaningful outcomes. Madam President, Jamaica believes in a future where multilateralism works for all, where no country is too small to be heard, where the concerns of small islands facing rising seas are addressed, where the benefits of globalization are equitably shared, and where international cooperation is based on respect for the sovereignty of each nation. Climate change, Madam President, is not a distant threat or an academic consideration. It is a daily reality for small island developing states like Jamaica. Frequent hurricanes, droughts, and erratic rainfall destroy infrastructure, displace communities, and set back decades of hard-fought progress. Jamaica has demonstrated unwavering leadership in climate action despite our limited resources. We have committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050 and have implemented our national adaptation plan with specific measures to build resilience across key sectors, and we are on track to achieve our renewable energy target of 50% by 2030. However, our efforts and those of other SIDS are severely constrained by the lack of predictable access to financing. The promise of $100 billion annually remains unfulfilled.
Everything that Andrew Holness just said. Hey, Antonio, what's up? Everything that Andrew Holness just said led up to the promise of $100 million has not been fulfilled. Beg him go beg. I beg him go beg in that speech. We need the money we want to promise with as a part of the UN, or we not get it. Climate change and all these things. And that him argument is about, This is the core of him argument, Everything we said before lead up to right at that point. You notice how me listen and I say nothing. That the man go a UN for talk about. I'm going to play the rest side. Let's continue.
Loss and Damage Fund established at COP28 was historic, yet access to financing. The promise of $100 billion annually remains unfulfilled. The Loss and Damage Fund established at COP28 was historic, yet its initial capitalization of $800 million is grossly inadequate. Developed countries must honor their commitments and scale up climate finance, recognizing that adaptation is a necessity for the survival of small island developing states. The global financing system remains fundamentally flawed. It penalizes reforming economies like Jamaica with high borrowing costs while ignoring our vulnerabilities. Through sacrifice, discipline, and sound management, Jamaica has reduced its debt to GDP ratio from 144% to now 62%. Yet we remain locked out of concessional financing because of outdated metrics based solely on per capita income. Jamaica supports the application of the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index that more accurately assesses countries' development needs and their eligibility for concessional financing. Jamaica also strongly supports innovative financing mechanisms, including debt for climate swaps, debt for nature swaps, and blended finance instruments that can unlock private sector investments in sustainable development projects while reducing debt burdens.
So, on here, financing, money. 100 billion, all the things that they need, this is for developing Jamaica. We don't get the money, we need the money. The money.
We welcome initiatives such as the IMF's Resilience and Sustainability Trust and call for its expansion to support more countries in building climate resilience. Madam President, multilateralism must deliver fairness for all countries to believe that constructive dialogue and engagement offers the best path forward for all countries. That is the case, Madam President, for the people of Cuba, so that they may be able to fully participate in the global economy. We encourage continued domestic reform in Cuba and greater integration into international systems supported by policies that enable progress rather than isolation. Madam President, Jamaica once again condemns the heinous October 7, 2023 attack on Israel and is deeply horrified by the devastating humanitarian consequences of the counteroffensive in the Palestinian territories. A just and peaceful resolution to the conflict is only possible through diplomacy and dialogue. We continue to support United Nations Security Council Resolution 242 and support the call for a ceasefire agreement that includes the release of all remaining hostages and definitively ending the protracted war and human suffering. Madam President, political instability, gang violence, and humanitarian crises in Haiti affect not only the Haitian people, but the entire region. As current chair of CARICOM, Jamaica has led and participated in efforts to restore peace and constitutional order in Haiti. Last year, we welcomed and participated in the deployment of the Multinational Security Support Mission to Haiti, and we commend Kenya's leadership in this initiative. Despite progress made, the situation remains dire. As we contemplate next steps, we urge member states, especially those in the Security Council, to operationalize the recommendations made by the Secretary General for a transition to a more robust hybrid mechanism to deal with the situation in Haiti. We call on member states to provide the necessary financial and logistic support to ensure the success of this initiative. But security operations alone will not suffice. Haiti's governance deficit and fragile institutional framework must be addressed. Once stability is restored, the international community must help rebuild democratic institutions, ensure free and fair elections, expand humanitarian relief, and invest in infrastructure to support long-term stability. Haiti's recovery requires sustained global support. Madam President, the Haitian crisis has laid bare a wider truth. Transnational criminal networks involved in cybercrime, trafficking arms, narcotics, and people, organizing violence and destabilizing institutions, are an existential threat to states. Gangs are now global syndicates with resources that rival nation states. Jamaica has made significant progress in tackling gangs and reducing our homicide rate by more than 50% in recent years. But we know that unless these networks are totally dismantled, our gains remain fragile. This is why we call for nothing less than a global war on gangs, a coordinated international campaign to cut off the flow of weapons, money, and the influence that sustains them. This requires deeper engagement from all member states. We urge full implementation of the UN Programme of Action on Small Arms and Light Weapons and the International Tracing Instrument. Major arms exporting countries must tighten export controls, strengthen end-use monitoring, and ensure rigorous post-delivery verification. Jamaica welcomes cooperation with all partners in this fight, including the interdiction of drug trafficking vessels, provided that such operations are carried out with full respect for international law, human rights, and with the coordination and collaboration of the countries of the region. The Caribbean has created regional security mechanisms, but these efforts alone cannot match the scale of the threat. What we need is a unified front with the same urgency, resources, and coordination the world has applied to terrorism. Only then can we turn the Caribbean, and indeed the wider region, into a true zone of peace. Madam President, at this 80th session, let us revitalize multilateralism and recommit to building a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable world. The challenges before us, climate change, debt, poverty, conflicts, and crime, are formidable. But our capacity for collective action is greater. Jamaica has shown that with sound policies, fiscal discipline, and good governance, small nations can achieve great progress. But to build on this progress, we need an international system that is fair, inclusive, and responsive. Let us not leave this assembly with words alone, but with commitments that deliver real change. Jamaica stands ready to work with all member states in partnership and solidarity to create a future defined by peace, prosperity, and dignity for all. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, members.
So, let me just get that out of the way. So, a lot of empty words there, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody said in the chat, he went up there and declared war against gangs, and we are not getting justice for that young man unaliving in Clarendon, Churchill Lane. No, people, I think that's an excellent point from Akil Carter. First time seeing in the chat, welcome to the platform. You say DB government. No, my thing is this. There was a lot of empty words. In terms of war against gangs, I'm not against a war against gang. But if you're going to have a war against gang, like I said before, you equally have to have a war against corruption in the government. If we have a corrupt government, corruption, crime will thrive. And when he spoke about transnational organized crime, well, who do you think facilitate transnational organized crime in a country? Somebody in the government or persons in the government has to be involved. There's no way you're having transnational crime thriving in a country when there isn't somebody inside the government that is compromising the efforts to clamp down on crime. A lot of people have to turn a blind eye. You know what transnational organized crime involves? Money laundering. People being abducted, what them call the black market, and people, them taking away children. You see all these missing kids, all these missing people, what the cases are never solved. Sherry, you know you're doing. The James one, big up, right? TikTok, big up. Let's get to 50,000 likes, please. Keep the taps up, please. For the people on YouTube, remember to hit the like button. Transnational organized crime is a litany of crimes culminated together. And I'm telling you, if you look at the history of transnational crime and investigations, the web of persons involved in them when caught, the government is involved. So how can we have a prime minister going to the UN talking about fighting gangs when he's suing the Integrity Commission? That's supposed to hold the people that are in leadership, including himself, to account where their statutory declarations is concerned. Letting us know that, listen, I am clear, I'm declared. I made my money legally. I am not a part of transnational crime. I am not a part of money laundering or anything of that sort. So you cannot tell us that you are going to fight gang warfare in Jamaica. And oh, by the way, did you realize he said to eliminate? Which country has eliminated crime? Just please let me know. Even the most hardened countries, Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, where they have some real gang, serious gang, where they build prison for specifically. Have you seen the crime go all the way down and totally eradicated? No. Because any real eradication of crime, it has to be, God has to be involved in it. There has to be a renewal of spirit, mind, body, and soul of the people. The fear of God has to be at the center of any progressive society that is moving away from criminality. Criminality is an offspring of sin, greed. Greed breeds corruption. You believe, say, you know, even though you did not work for it, you're supposed to have more than the other person, to the point where you will see what they have, bad mind them and covet them feet, and want to take it from them. But I don't want to go too much into it. Like I said, there was a lot of empty words from Andrew Holness. His actions is contradicting his words. And him really got to big. It's really about the money. You understand? The $100 billion where they're supposed to give them. It's the first thing him talk about. So that was the entree of topics on his speech. But let's go to Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister, President of Barbados. Let's get to her, because it's the difference is so obvious in the two speeches. It's so let's listen. It's so obvious.
To preside over this landmark 80th session of the General Assembly.
Barbados. I request protocol Barbados. I request protocol to escort Her Excellency and invite her to address the Assembly.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The 21st century has been marked by a series of crises for which our world has been unprepared. Financial crisis that started in 2008, which then triggered fiscal crises across many of the world's countries. And if that was not enough, a social crisis characterized by rising inequality with the consequences thereto, be it substance abuse, mental health challenges, homelessness, or human trafficking. Then there was a global pandemic, lasting 2 to 3 years and taking the lives of millions of people. And for those surviving, they had restricted movement and restricted choices.
Did you know that cilantro can detox your kidneys, reduce inflammation, boost urine production?
All of this, my friends, has been exacerbated by the spreading of fake news. This distorts reality and threatens the stability of our societies, creating a platform for hate to thrive and prejudice to rise. But deeper than all of these crises is a bigger, more insidious crisis that is undermining our domestic and global institutions that have promoted order, peace, and prosperity. It is, my friends, the crisis of truth. Excellencies, when we lose shared truth, our communities, our countries, our global society loses their center of gravity. At first, the damage may seem quiet. Words bend and facts drift in the service of political point scoring. But slowly, over time, we descend into political tribalism. We develop alternative realities and we are unable to understand each other and communicate with each other because we lack a center. Then we grow suspicious of each other. In the absence of truth, trust deteriorates. And we see it all around us, in global forums, and indeed on the blocks and in the communities in our own countries. Trust between neighbors, trust between the governed and the governing, trust in our instructions, trust in our social order, trust in our health systems, trust in our global rules, governance structures. It all seems, in the words of Chinua Achebe, to be falling apart. When we lack truth and we lack trust, law becomes theater, news becomes spectacle, and science becomes just another opinion. As I've had cause to say in this great hall on a few times, our world today worryingly resembles the world of 100 years ago. And this has become even more evident with the closing of our borders to both goods and to people. This has magnified the geopolitical tensions which had already taken root. Disturbingly, war regrettably has only entered the daily lexicon of the West, not when thousands were dying on the continent of Africa or in Myanmar, but when war came to Europe. Nevertheless, we still call for peace in the Ukraine. Only yesterday, a leading British newspaper reminded us that for 500 days, 260,000 people, virtually the population of my country, 260,000 people have been trapped in the Sudanese city of El Fasher. The article reported that while political progress stalls, those who attempt to escape are killed, and those who remain inside are starved. The world must not ignore the horror in Sudan. And of course, I don't need to remind you that it must not ignore the horror in Gaza. The genocidal destruction taking place in both places must now have our full attention. And as it relates to Gaza, yes, there must be a release of the hostages taken on October 7th. But we have now gone to a point where all of our human sensibilities are offended by the continuous and disproportionate attacks on the Palestinian people and the failure to allow access by the international community to the survivors for the provision of humanitarian aid. The survivors are entitled, my friends, to use the words of Bob Marley. How can you be sitting there telling me that you care, when every time I look around, the people suffer in the suffering in every way, in everywhere?
You know, this is the moment when I said, you know, I want to be a citizen of Barbados. Talk about an impactful speech already. There's so much things that she has covered, you know. So many global topics. She has covered the intricacies of the UN and how they treat the smaller countries. She has touched on Pakistan and Israel, the war. She has touched on the pandemics. She even touched on fake news on social media. She has touched on so many different topics in this, I don't even know, 7 minutes of her speech. The lady is, and then she quoted Bob Marley. No, seriously, can I be a citizen of this country? Like I am well, she's just a mouthpiece. Barbadians have another perspective. Well, leadership counts and leadership matters. This is a lady that I would follow. Yes, I don't agree with everything, but the core of what she's standing on, I'm rocking with her. Her speech already has more substance than Andrew's speech. Let's continue. What's up, Paula? Her speech already has more substance than Andrew Holness' speech. This is sad, man. This is sad.
My friends, it calls to mind the Roman historian Tacitus, who quoted a Scottish chieftain fighting against the military might of the Roman Empire. And I mention only the last two sentences. They plunder, they butcher, they ravish, they make it desert and call it peace. They make it desert and they call it peace.
So, that quote, hey Selena, they make it desert and they call it peace. That is a very accurate quote based on what is happening in Israel. I don't even speak on these things, but if you know, you know. Let's continue.
The real tragedy of war is that these children, when they become grandparents, will still be answering the innocent questions posed by their grandchildren 70, 80 years from now as to how they lost their limbs. Granny, how did you lose your leg? And when they answer, we run the risk that the violence and hate will be perpetuated for another 2 to 3 generations. This is not why we have come together. This is not good. And Madam President, it is happening under our watch. We can and we must do better to secure the peace across the world in the name of the children. And let me say that at the very least, the international community must immediately find the funding to support the children of Gaza and the children of Sudan for the next 3 months.
You know, I'm sorry, I have to stop it. It's too much substance coming from this lady that I have to highlight. Because this is what I do in my reactions. Listen, man. You heard what you said about generational hurt? When you bomb somewhere, this lady is a survivor now, or this man is a survivor, and lost their leg. They have grandchildren. They have people in their community. Curious. Don't know what happened. Generations came afterwards. What happened to your leg, mommy? What happened to your leg, grandpa? Well, you know, there was a war and Israel bombed our country. Why did Israel bomb our country? You know, because the hate for Israel or any other country that was the aggressor is going to come. Because here's my grandmother that I love. And it's the same thing with slavery. Anybody that had a parent that went through slavery, a grandparent that went through slavery, that told them those stories, it is automatic that you're going to develop those feelings towards the set of people that did that to your mother, your father, your brother, your sister. You understand? Your cousin, your aunt, whatever the case might be. We black people know that are living in this time, if we saw the things that happened to our ancestors in live and living color, oh, the energy would be different, fam. It is an automatic that the energy would be different. You heard what I said? And even when it comes down to the race that did that to our people, that's one of the things they fear the most. So when it comes on to black people uniting like in America, there is an effort to stamp out certain types of unity that they cannot monitor or control. So they will infiltrate entities like Black Lives Matter, where they will start off in the right vein, but then it becomes colluded and diluted and lacking substance because, you know, they wave money around. And there's not a lot of persons that in this world that can resist the temptation of money being waved, enough money being waved around at them. They won't stand on principle. They won't stand on integrity. It's very rare that you actually see that, you know. So the devil knows. The devil knows the weaknesses of men, and the devil exploits them quite regularly. But this argument that she's making, the perpetuation of hate, yeah, man. I think when you think about that, the Bible says, I think the Bible says, you know, if it is possible, live in peace with all men. If it is possible. And it also says, forgive your brother 7 times 70. Isn't that right, mommy? So those two things, when I really look at those two things, you know, I think that would help us to maintain peace. And I think inadvertently, I think that is our argument. You know, we have to respect and love each other. And it starts from the nation levels, the bigger nation to the smaller nation. And that's what I'm getting from it. Let's continue.
UNICEF has said that in Gaza it is $66 million that is needed for the next 3 months. And in Sudan it is $200 million. The money is mostly nutrition related, to reverse or to mitigate famine for children, and to provide water and sanitation and health interventions. And we should note that there have been multiple disease outbreaks, including cholera. So, Madam President, to be very clear as I move on, a lasting peace can never be achieved through violence, not continued bombing. It can only be achieved through justice as our guide and dialogue, talking. And lest we forget, where others are seeking to build the peace and to preserve humanity in Gaza, as we saw, the international community must not condone the bombing of those states who look to facilitate peace. It is a red line that we must never cross. Madam President, I say simply again, another year, the world needs a reset. We must find, first and foremost, whether we still agree on the same values that inform our charter. As simple as this seems, this is necessary in any reset. For values we all know have changed over the last 80 years, and we cannot assume that it is business as usual. And if it is not available to all of us to agree to those values, then we must at least know who does and who doesn't. In addition to our inability to bring about peace in multiple conflicts, there really still are a number of issues that threaten our way of life and the stability of our planet beyond war.
How many times do you go to the gym?
The climate crisis, life, and the stability of our planet beyond war. The climate crisis, food insecurity, water scarcity, mass flow of refugees and displaced persons, poverty and increasing inequality within and between societies. It has become so insidious that people don't even talk about it sufficiently. And of course, the failing spectacle of the SDGs for too many of our countries and people across the world. And of course, unregulated AI, which, while it has tremendous promise, poses unregulated significant risk. Many of our people ask every day, why has the United Nations not done better recently? The simple truth, my friends, is that countries have lacked the political will to live by the Charter and to do what is right for humanity. Countries of different sizes, capacities, and cultures can only survive in this world in which we live if we maintain a rules-based system. It is no different to what we have to do in our own countries to maintain and protect the vulnerable and the weak. In fact, it's no different than what has to be done in a child's playground. The rules-based system is what protects us from bullying and from rogue behavior. Our charter was designed to promote compassion, equality, fairness. And this is why it is imperative that we maintain a rules-based system. I speak as a leader of a small country. Our future is placed at risk unless we preserve this rules-based system. The law of the jungle does not guarantee any of us a future on a livable, or indeed doesn't guarantee us a livable planet. We have simply to step up to the plate. And unlike the West Indian Federation, when one country left and the maths of the day was 1 from 10 leaves 0, we must remember that if there are those who don't want to be inside at the dance, that 1 or 2 or 3 from 193 does not leave 0. Does not leave 0. Those of us who remain can continue to pursue our vital interests. And we don't criticize countries for making sovereign decisions, because that's what governments were elected to do. If that's not what they want, that's not what they want. But let us get on with the business and protect our vital interests of preserving a rules-based system, to strengthen us, to build peace, to allow us to better face challenges from climate to pandemics to unregulated AI, and generally to build a better life for our people. There is no doubt that there is a case for efficiency gains to be made in this United Nations institutional framework. We know that. But once we finish the efficiency gains, member states who want or need a rules-based order must put their money where their mouth is. If we are to be protected by a rules-based system, then we must step up to the plate and provide the funds to bridge the gap, to deliver the results that we desire. We must move from short pants to long pants and understand that we can no longer complain about the absence or behavior of a country and not ourselves be prepared to make wrong things right. It is as simple as that. And believe me, the arithmetic is not bad. It is within each of our reach to reach there, to do it. And let us remember the Aristotelian principle: equality among equals, proportionality among unequals. My friends, and while we contemplate the multiple crises, let us also not despair, because there are some things that have worked for the benefit of our people in the last few years. We now have, globally, a historic pandemic agreement that was adopted to make the world equitable, more equitable, and safer from future pandemics. A full appreciation of this will only come when the next pandemic hits us. We have agreed to the Seville Commitment on Finance, which seeks to fulfill the promise of the SDGs, and which, even though the funding has not been fully identified, has mainstreamed a number of financing concepts that were simply not taken into account a decade ago. Debt swaps, natural disaster clauses, or what they call climate resilient debt clauses. These are the things that we advocated in the Bridgetown Initiative. We have committed, also as a world, last year here, to an ambitious global action plan to combat antimicrobial resistance. And what does that have to do with any of us in here? I've said repeatedly, this is the silent, slow-motion pandemic of the 21st century, and threatens to reverse a century of medical progress. And when we know people who die from hospital-aided infections, we understand the importance of the vital steps taken here. Earlier this week, we successfully brought into force the Beyond Boundaries and National Jurisdiction Treaty. As a large ocean state, as Barbados is, I am acutely aware of the critical importance to protect our oceans and its marine biodiversity as part of the ecological balance of the planet. And last year, we adopted the ambitious Pact for the Future, which provides a roadmap, a North Star, for our work to protect people and planet of the future. The two instruments mentioned on Tuesday morning by our Secretary General for regulating AI must now be our priority if we are to avoid the severe deepening inequality of our times and to avoid leaving our people exposed to the risk and exploitation of AI and the distortion of facts. I must tell you that regrettably, I have experienced on a well-known commercial AI platform examples of censorship that seek to deny access to the details of our history in this hemisphere, in terms of the Barbados Slave Code, in terms of the South Carolina Slave Code. So we must be vigilant. Speaking as a small country, therefore.
No. Listen, man. This speech blew Andrew Holness' speech out of the water. There's so much that she has touched on. That's vitally important to not just right now, but our future. Where are we going? We are going into AI. But an unregulated AI is dangerous. You heard what you said about altering history? We are very dependent on Google. A lot of people are very dependent on ChatGPT. right? Is it ChatGPT or whatever? But they were dependent on those things. My point is this: our dependency on those things, you know, those things can be controlled or altered in some capacity, right? Some capacity, those things are affected. So this point about air that she's making and the regulation, I mean, I don't know when they're going to reach the point of regulation, but all I can say is this: Jamaica. Our data in Jamaica, them trying to have a digital system, a total digital system, a lot of people are going to be in tears. Let me just say that. I am guaranteed, a lot of people are going to be in tears. Because you see the needs, you know, you're talking about all your information on your medical, your land ownership, your titles, all of it digitalized in one database. Any breach of that database, tears. You remember them, you all hear them talk about that, even people here on here, one Liberate mention it, FinSac. Well, if AI unregulated is gonna make what they claim FinSac was, it's gonna make it look like child's play. AI unregulated. Yeah? You remember with a net? Oh my God. Let's continue.
We see no future without a rules-based system. And before I go on, let me recognize the outgoing President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Philemon Yang, for his impactful presidency last year. And let me also congratulate Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock for assuming the presidency, particularly in this year when we celebrate Beijing Plus 30. Barbados looks forward to working with you, ma'am, to execute your vision. The fact that you are only the 5th woman to occupy this post over the last 80 years is a cause both for profound concern, but I say renewed optimism. This is a testament to the very point that I'm seeking to make. The organization is working, even if not at optimal levels, but we still have so much to do. Madam President, on climate finance, there is climate and finance, I should say, there's a real danger that debates in this great chamber, at the conference of the parties and elsewhere, risk being reduced to mere performative exercises. We have watched the widely celebrated green wave which swept Europe in 2019. We've seen it now recede, and in its backwash, that continent now faces deep division over the scale, scope, and speed of delivery on commitments made to eliminate climate harm and pollution by 2050. We've seen others withdraw from the Paris Agreement. At a time, Madam President, when we should be conducting an audit of the achieved targets and accomplished deliverables, we continue for the most part to receive IOUs and statements of deferred intent. Even as we have witnessed this vacillation that I just referred to, we've also seen a rededication to breathing new life into high carbon and high polluting forms of energy. And we have witnessed a redoubling of efforts to fund military buildups, even at the expense of financing our way to sustainability and that of a livable planet.
When we touch here, maybe just try this, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, that feels...
Barbados does not treat climate science as a mere conjecture, and neither does the International Court of Justice nor the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Their advisory opinions have affirmed the legal rights and entitlements of citizens who must on a daily basis confront the impact of the climate crisis. In this regard, we especially welcome the International Court of Justice's ruling to the effect that states have obligations to protect the climate system and other parts of the environment from emissions, and that those obligations can be enforced against other states. Given this new reality as we look ahead, we must seize the opportunity to find common ground, given the diversity of opinions on this question of the climate crisis. I propose that one possible way forward is to focus on emissions rather than focusing on the fossil fuel industry. As I've said before, the fossil fuel industry is not the enemy. It is the emissions. In this regard, we should consider working towards a globally legal binding framework on methane, which could contribute to reversing global temperatures, I'm told by the scientists, by as much as half a degree, while purchasing time for the fossil fuel industry to scale up to a commercial level the use of decarbonizing technology. This is possible. The Baku to Belém roadmap must also ensure that the necessary resources, $1.3 trillion annually by 2035, are not only committed, but delivered. It is the political will and the ingenuity of countries and financial institutions that will ensure that these sums can be delivered. It must not, and we must not allow that roadmap to suffer the same fate as the Loss and Damage Fund, which, despite its historic establishment, remains grossly undercapitalized, with less than $800 million pledged, and regrettably, only half of those pledges have actually materialized. This ambivalence towards finance and fiscal space, my friends, is what gave birth to the Bridgetown Initiative. Its latest iteration, Bridgetown 3.0, will shortly be reviewed, given the rapidly changing global environment in which we live. We still need to expand liquidity support and to close the financing gap to assist vulnerable countries, especially the V20, many of whom still face the possibility of a debt crisis. They need it to build their resilience and to adapt to the new climate reality. I am conscious of the progress by which multilateral institutions have taken on board some of our arguments in the Bridgetown Initiative, especially as it relates to climate finance and to the issue of vulnerability. I referred earlier to debt swaps and the climate resilient debt clauses. Madam President, all of these goals and many more can be achieved by a fully functional rules-based system, one that is ambitious in its goals, effective in its delivery, and fair in its organization. As the UN80 process seeks to enhance the functioning of this organization, we must ensure that we put in place the initiatives that are not the exclusive outgrowth of budget constraints and cross-cutting exercises, but are instead initiatives that are people-focused, delivery-driven, providing the global population with the peace and the security and the quality of life that they deserve and that they are increasingly demanding. To this effect, the Security Council, we know, must be reformed. It must reflect the multipolar world that we now live in, and it must give an opportunity to recognize that there have been substantial geopolitical shifts since 1962 when you had your last reform, 3 years before I was born, and I turn 60 next week. Permanent seats for Africa and a seat that revolves for small island developing states are an essential part of that reform, because we all have perspectives that must be heard. You cannot ask us really to show up for family photos and votes when you need them, and then exclude us from the family's decision-making as if you are the grown-ups and we are the children.
Ooh, man, listen. Boy, hey. She hitting hard, ain't she? Boy, she addressing the UN, everybody, man. Listen. You gotta fix things, all right? And then her argument about emissions, I just think that really and truly, a lot of there is people in position and power out there that talks about clean energy, but they don't really care. It sounds good. It's something to get funding for, but especially in terms of especially in terms of the small countries. When it comes to carbon footprint, I don't know if you guys do any research on that, but we don't affect the world in that capacity. We don't. How many of you knew that they have been putting artificial mosquitoes in our atmosphere? Well, America's atmosphere. I don't know if it affects us. Listen to this. Let me find it. Let me find it. A long time I don't really give you nothing like this. I'ma feel like more at it because of the conversation which I have. There's a lot of alterations that is being done that really, does not help us. You know what I mean? I want you guys to listen to this. A lot of things that are being done in this world that most of us are really just unaware of. Listen to this.
What you are witnessing right here is something nobody voted for. Nobody said yes to this. If they had taken a vote, I guarantee most people would say no. This is the release of hundreds of millions of genetically modified mosquitoes in Florida. Now, the idea behind this, the mainstream official narrative, is that these are genetically modified to be sterile, and when they try to breed with the female mosquito in the wild, it'll lower the mosquito population. But here's the crazy part. Where is the documentation? Because surely they have like a genetic profile and all of the science behind these mosquitoes. We don't see any of that. We just hear we're releasing GMO mosquitoes to keep the population down. What type of gene sequences are included in these mosquitoes? What happens if you're bit by a genetically modified mosquito? Why is there no discussion or transparency on this issue? Now, this article is from 2020, but they've been doing this every year. In 2020, 750 million GMO mosquitoes were approved for release. Who approved them? Certainly they didn't ask the public. And secondly, I will say, you know the food chain? You know that mosquitoes, like frogs eat them, dragonflies, it's a major food source, birds eat them, bats eat them. We know how important bats are for the ecosystem. So this is not a good idea, yet it's being done. Why? Because I don't buy the official story that this is to keep the population of mosquitoes down. That may be the result of this, but there's something else going on here. Comment your thoughts below and follow for more. What you are witnessing...
Now, I have a lot of concerns. And I have a lot of questions based off the questions that he asked. If you look at the screen and you see what they are spraying from the helicopter, that look alone gives the perception of, is this poison? That's the first thing. Perception, not reality. Anyway, the other thing is, the question he asked about what happens when a genetically modified mosquito bites you. Interesting. What if those genetically modified mosquitoes could be weaponized against the population? Is that possible? The argument is that the mosquitoes is supposed to take out the other mosquitoes and drop the population of mosquitoes. Don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for mosquitoes, but God Almighty never made any mistake. And every time mankind intervenes in God Almighty's plan, it is catastrophic. And this is a fact. Every single time mankind has meddled in God's order and plan for us, we have faced catastrophic consequences. I don't know the gravity of the consequence of this that they're doing. I don't purport to know. However, using my little bird brain, if majority are the other, you know, the birds, the frogs, you know, all the other animals, because you know the food chain, the mosquito is a major source of sustenance. Well, let me ask you something. When them take food from off of your plate, what happens to you? Do you get sick, malnourished, immune system drop, maybe death? So what is going to happen to all of these species? That mosquito is a major source of their food that they consume. What's going to happen to them? And if it is that it's going to create a chain where they are also going to be consistently diminished. And what's up, Chill? Their actual purpose on Earth in the ecosystem, whatever that is, how important that is, what are those functions that the frog, the bat, the bat, we talk about the bat. Do you guys see where I'm going here? It's a chain reaction of events. The mosquitoes, the animals that eat so the population of mosquitoes going down, the animals eating the mosquito. What happens when a mosquito, a genetically mosquito, is eaten by animals? What happens? What happens in there? Again, we have seen studies and we have seen salmon, genetically modified salmon released in the wild. The almighty code. There's a code in all of us. The connection between the plants, us, the animals, the earth, men, and a specific man. A specific man. For those that are watching my Bolo TBV, you can see the specific man on the screen. He's an agent of the devil himself. Every single thing that this man champions goes against nature. So they want to reduce the mosquito population. They also want to reduce the man, we, the people. They have been doing it for years. Oh, 2 kids is better than too many. They have programmed our minds as black people especially to not have large families anymore. Oh, it has worked. It has worked. The women are suffering many different things in their personal, their experience with their cycle, all the pain and the uncomfort in their body because of the foods. Discomfort. I said uncomfort, didn't I? I'm sorry. Thank you for the correction. The discomfort in their body because of the food, the water, we are being attacked on a chemical level. And I'm going to play one more video. And then I'm going to end this reaction because we're going off grid. But my spirit leads me to so. Here we are. Listen to this.
Damn, y'all hear about this? Coca-Cola sued for claims that its all-natural Simply Orange juice has high levels of toxic chemicals. Hey, that's crazy. I ain't gonna lie, I didn't even know Coca-Cola owned them. I'm curious now. So apparently Simply Orange juice has been found to be contaminated with toxic PFAS at levels hundreds of times above federal advisory limits for drinking water. PFAS are a class of 12,000 chemicals called forever chemicals because they do not naturally break down and they link to cancer, fetal complications, liver disease, kidney disease, autoimmune disorders, and more. This suit was filed in the Southern District of New York. The complaint is his packaging and branding mentions all natural ingredients and nothing to hide, which is alleged to be misleading because it has synthetic chemicals that make it not natural. Damn, Slim. What's y'all thought on this? Do you even drink this orange juice? Do you even care about these claims? Comment that below right now. Damn, y'all hear about...
So apparently, Simple Orange Juice is, Coca-Cola is being sued in New York. No, how you doing? Because Simple Orange Juice has high levels of toxic chemicals in there. But on the label, it says it's natural. How many of these products, unknowing to us, fits this criteria? Listen, man, they said it's 100 times over the safe limit of even drinking water. The orange juice. Do you know how much Americans like orange juice is You know how we have a national dish like ackee and saltfish, and the Americans that are on my day ones are people that are new to the platform. You can confirm this. Orange juice is a significant and important staple in people's breakfast. First thing, one of the first things that they drink in the morning. Growing up as a baby, and you're telling me that we got orange juice out here alleged to have high levels of toxic chemicals in there, synthetic. What does that mean for the future of that child? How will that affect their body, mind, spirit, and soul? How will it affect it? You know, when we talk about food security in Jamaica, this is one of the reasons. All these imports from overseas, especially in America. This ain't it, bro. This ain't it. You hear me? Has a toxic called PFAS. Levels 100 times above federal advised limits for drinking water. That's crazy. Right? You're talking about cancers, fetal complication. How many of you guys have constipation in America? Hello? Liver disease, kidney disease, autoimmune disorder. Yo, I don't know. You know how many of us have autoimmune disorder? I got it. I got it. Serious health issues. But I digress, you know. I'm gonna leave that right there. This reaction has gone over all. And so shout out to Miss Mottley, Mrs. Mottley or Miss Mottley. And I want to you guys can go watch the rest of her speech or listen it. I want to thank her for her advocacy and her voice. Again, there are some things that I understand that, you know, it's a part of the global agenda, especially where the UN is concerned. And it's smoke and mirrors. But, you know, the governments and the data that they have given, they have bought into it. And I'm not going to argue that data, no, or even on this platform. I'm not going to do it. I am neither qualified nor am I educated. But I have a hunch. That's all I have. Alright? Well, let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Like up the video, man.